We now move on to the last part of our session. I would like to invite all the speakers of this morning from the 3 projects to sit in front of you. I also like to invite and encourage people online also to come up with questions to the speakers in the hope that we can get a nice discussion going. And I'd like to ask you for a first question, and I propose to start with the first presentations by the Moxy team. Are there any questions so far?
Does it work? Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Alexandre Cosset from the Fondation for Heritage Sciences in Paris. You talked this morning about the social assessment of the Moxy device. I think social assessment is a very interesting point because this is also a key to demonstrate the impact of our research on society. Could you maybe tell a bit more about what you did, and did you apply qualitative, quantitative methods?
So this is on, yes. So the method that we followed is called social life cycle assessment. So it follows the same kind of methodology as what we did for the environmental assessment. But the difference is that we look at different social impact categories for the different stakeholder groups. So in this case, we had to define the stakeholder groups. So there's the users of the tool, so the conservators, there's the local community, there's the consumers of the art, which in this case were people who visit exhibitions and museums, and there's also society at large. And this follows a guideline that was set by the UNEP for social LCA and has recently become also an ISO standard since last year for defining these different social themes. So the way we do it is that first we do an assessment to choose which social themes are relevant. And then we do a data collection to do a grading of the different social themes to see where we have more positive or also risky areas. So that's the nice thing about this assessment, is that it doesn't only look at social risks, but it also looks at social benefits for the different stakeholder categories. And if I start talking about this, I'll never stop. So I will just repeat that this will be discussed in detail in the webinar that we are organizing in May. So if you're interested, that's the place to be.
Okay. Cecil, did you have a question that was not at the moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's for Ilaria and Geert. Considering how did you assess the effect of the cleaning, Moxy cleaning on the substrates? For example, the silk. I guess you had some both chemical and physical assessments.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Well, I mean, let's say, as I've been working more understanding the impact from the chemical and physical point of view, so we've been using a variety of technique from mostly mass spectrometry in different ways, and then a little bit of spectroscopy, but mostly the most efficient for detecting changes was mass spectrometry. And in fact, we are now collaborating with Bordeaux to do some proteomics because it was so difficult to detect changes. So that was the thing. But then the assessment of the cleaning was done by Geert and his group.
Yeah, so we basically divided into 2-step procedure. The first step are the more macroscopic methods, which are basically based on what you see visually with the microscope simply, or with SEM, or with color changes, etc. So that's the first step, and then the second step is then we look to Elaria to see what's happening inside the silk fiber. So the mass spectrometry methods and other DMA, etc. Yeah.
One question.
Yes, I'd like to thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I'm Bessia Giropoulou. I'm representing Encore. And I have a question that could go to Moxy, but it can also go to all the projects dealing with life cycle assessment. I'm wondering if you had any case studies in cultural heritage dealing with toxic or hazardous materials. So for example, we know when there's a fire, the soot may contain asbestos, for example, or you may have in architectural surfaces or in metals, paints with lead and other types of heavy metals. So you might produce waste with your techniques that become toxic or hazardous. Did you look at this aspect in your projects? Moxy can answer in terms of soot and the composition of soot from a fire, for example.
Not really, I think.
No, we didn't.
We didn't incorporate that because one of the things where we looked into soot, especially Nan did that. I don't know where she is. She looked deeply into soot, and it's a very complex material. It depends a lot on what kind of fire and what materials are burned, of course. But so we were. It was clear was not able to look at all these different types of materials that can be burned and what's deposited on things. So we looked at we narrowed it down to a basic kind of suits by simplifying things. Otherwise, we could not do all these very systematic tests. But you're absolutely right. It can be very. It's a very complex material. Yeah.
Can I ask Loïc or Sylvia also to comment on this, to answer this?
Well, for the GoGreen project, we perform LCA in order to compare the impact of the electrospuntation with respect to cotton swab cleaning. And what we consider is the disposal of the material after the treatment. And there was no time to go in detail of the study we perform. We refer to a specific painting. So the unit that has been considered to measure the LCA was 1 centimeter square of the painting to be treated in order to know the amount of solvent, the amount of cotton swab, the amount of electrospun to be produced, used, and then disposed. So in this sense, also the disposal of the product is something that has to be handled and considered in the evaluation.
Thank you.
I'll just add that for the Moxy LCA, we also had a similar approach where we need to define a functional unit based on a cleaning of a specific type of contaminant on a specific type of sample. And then, of course, the end of life, so the disposal of everything that's used is also taken into account, but a characterization of the soot itself and of different soot categories was not done.
Thank you. There are a few questions online, more generic, but also one that particularly addresses GREENART. So I'd like to pass the microphone by Carla Salem. My question is specific to Dr. Ormby's presentation. There was a mention of old adhesive removal from paper studies, and I'm very much interested in this topic. A very specific reference to this. Do you have any comments about that and references?
References. It was University of West Attica who were doing that work in particular. I'm not sure if they've published anything yet, have they?
Not yet.
I think they will do. It was particularly starch removal from aged old starch removal from works on paper, old adhesive removal. They were using PG +3, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the hydrogels. So let's hope that they publish that because they were very excited by the results for that.
Thank you. One question from Laura Angelova. Also for I guess for you, David or Bronwyn, is about when I teach gel cleaning workshops, conservators consistently mention the double plastic packaging for NanoStart gels, which they perceive as not sustainable. That's a very specific question once again.
Well, I would
Can you
say...
comment?
I know Laura. I mean, I was a student of us, so it's...
Yeah. Well, we had a full work package in GreenArt to develop a new sustainable packaging materials. And they can work for works of art, to package work of arts, but potentially they can sure work for materials to restore works of art. So that's also a possibility that we can, implement.
Thank you. Anyone to follow up on that?
I think it's a nice question because it phrases not only product but total thing that should be sustainable.
Yeah.
Oh,
repeat?
I just say I found it a very nice question because it makes us aware that it's not only the products we are developing, but it's a total package, and I think that's what is highlighting this question very nicely.
Yeah.
So in principle, you can do all. So you can make, instead of plastic, you can make some different plastic, sustainable plastic with a definite time life. So the problem is that conservators want to have this object that live as long as possible. Then if you pack in a package that has a time, time frame that is about maybe 1 year or 6 months, and they degrade completely and destroy itself, can be a problem for conservators. So once you have the package and you guarantee that the package is safe for the content you have in the package, then you discard the plastic bag as plastic. Okay? So you cannot have a world where everything is green, because that's impossible. This means to go back to 4th century after Christ. So you have to consider that you can discard and you can reobtain from that material a new plastic, for example. In the cycle, you don't have too much impact with the environment. So plastic can be recycled. That's the problem. You don't need to discard plastic. You have plastic, and you can recycle. The problem is that plastic often go in the environment, so degrade in different pathway, instead of controlling the degradation pathway of plastic. But you cannot rid out of plastic, at least in the next 50, 60, 70 years. So you have to learn how to keep and recycle. That's my opinion.
I would like to shift a little bit to a more general questions also about, Bronwyn already mentioned her frequent interactions with formerly known as end users, people from heritage institutions, more particular probably conservators. And there is one question also by Laura, if the representatives could speak a bit more to the specific ways that their project's directions may have shifted based on the input from conservators. Can you address that? Maybe
I can start a little bit. But for us was very important because the first interaction was what drove the design of the device, because when we were having the elicitation study, it was very clear that people was thinking about laser cleaning. So the one of the reasons why our device has got the nozzles like that is also connected with these similarities, let's say, with the idea of laser cleaning. And again, in the experimentation and the choice of the materials that we were going to investigate, but even in the choice of, for example, we were testing oil paintings specifically in Pisa, even the choice of the pigments. We had this interesting discussions with end users that were giving really generously lots of advice on how to carry out experimentation, or what were critical points and what were materials that needed testing and so on. So for us, it's been really very precious.
What I can also maybe add to similar remarks than Ilaria has been doing is that we have two other places as well, I think, where we have conservators participating to the GoGreen project. We have conservators within our institutions and being trained as PhDs and postdocs, which is quite remarkable because we have this new generation of colleagues who actually are very trained on a very broad skill set and actually going from the object to either characterization or development of new treatments, which is quite impressive. And also, I already mentioned that, but the fact that actually we have impact directly at the training stage. So I'm thinking about some activities with conservators being trained at the Sorbonne University in Paris, and directly during their initial training, they're actually also part of the project and doing some tests directly with solutions on coupons typically. And we think this is also interesting developments and far, as you said, from the pure end user concept that pre-existed until then.
I would also to add that we organize several hands-on demonstration and also participation of congresses where end users are present allowed us to spread the new material developed in the frame of the project. This create a lot of interest and a lot of request of collaboration outside the consortium. So for instance, for the electrospoon material, we have established more than 15 connections with private conservator, with institutions outside the consortium. And what is quite useful for us is receiving feedback from them about the use of the material and possible new application. On how to use it, in which field, so it is quite useful for us in order to address the research to what the community asks.
I might just add a small amount. I think with GREENART it was really important very early. In fact, it was designed, wasn't it, to have heritage partners from the beginning. I know you all did, but I think one of the differences perhaps between GREENART and the other projects is we got conservators testing really, really quickly with the materials. They were coming out quickly, and so the feedback loop was pretty fast. So the modification loop was also quite quick, because we, certainly at Tate's project, we aimed to do the treatments as well as all the evaluation studies, so it was quite an ambitious aim, I guess. So one of the things for me is that the research skills are also transferred and learned by the conservators involved. So it's not just scientists. I know this is an old school approach, but scientists doing all the thinking and the conservators doing the doing, because the thinking that the conservators do is hugely vital to what we're all up to. And that's always been a model that I've tried to work towards. And so the Tate project had conservators full-time taken off their normal roles to really focus and to learn and to contribute and to annoy and to do all the things, to challenge and to bring ethics in and to talk about all the things that may not be touched on with a pure science mind frame. And in terms of translating things to the market, if you call it a market, that bit's hugely important. You have to convince them it's worth using and it's worth putting down their favourite tool that they've become really bloody good at to move towards a green solution. So there's a lot of, I think for me that's quite important in the whole process, and I think these projects are doing that very well, better than I've seen in the past, actually. And I've been around probably way too long, probably. But, you know, it's really important. I think that needs to get stronger and stronger as we move forward. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah. In addition,
Just to add a very short comment, because it reminds me of what David said at the beginning of his presentation. I think this aspect, this interaction is always a challenge, but on the other hand, I think we are really pioneers in these high interdisciplinary skills. So as David was saying at the beginning, we also are providing new ideas and new products for other applications and other industrial communities. But in terms of interdisciplinarity, I always see that now that I maybe work with also more departments in my institutions, for instance, I can see that we are really pioneer in terms of true interdisciplinarity. And I think it's also something that can benefit beyond our own field to other fields.
That's a good point. Thank you. Is there then, it was already touched upon, that there's, of course, you have feedback from conservators of all kinds. There's always a bit of, or there may be a bit of tension between conservators employed by institutions and freelance conservators. Do you see a difference in the response, for example, and how you interact?
I think the C word cost can come in. Mm-hmm. But I don't see a difference that much, actually, between private conservators, certainly who work on modern contemporary art, and the institutional equivalents. It may be different in other areas of conservation, but I don't necessarily see that. I don't know if others have experience.
Well, probably also the need of private conservator may be sometimes different from the one that work in the institution. Well, for the economic cost of the material is for sure something which is a problem, but also the efficacy of the methods in terms of time that are needed to do the treatment. This is something that private conservators stress more than for what I perceived speaking both with private conservator and people in the institution. And the general frustration is the availability of these materials. At the moment, with the funds of the project, we are capable to produce the material and send for free to the people who ask us, because it's part of the project itself. But after the end of the project, then being able to be ready to produce something that is economic sustainable is an issue and needs further work.
If I can add something, in our case, it's a technology. So there was some discussion when I was talking with people working in big institutions where they could consider the acquisition of a Moxy machine, let's say, when it was going to be on the market, but that was going to be very different for private conservators. And so this is very important to be taken into consideration for the next steps, where we have to consider, for example, leasing or renting, or I don't know, so possibilities that make the technology accessible also for people that don't work in big institutions. And it's greener. Yeah.
Indeed, accessibility. Is there any more question about this topic?
I had one question, but I just wanted just one point which actually already touched, but maybe I just wanted to bring it maybe more to focus about cooperation, working together with conservators. And as we develop new materials and we wish that they have impact, they come into practice and they're being used. Actually, the missing link are conservation treatment. So it's material alone is not enough. It's critical that it's being used. However, that link is, in my view, is a little broken or not yet built. That it's not. it's equally important as developing materials. It's equally important developing treatments with the same scientific rigor as we develop and test materials. And conservators not always have these possibilities to develop and test, and a bit like in medicine, like there is development of pharmaceuticals and there's development of treatments. So what do you think about this? Like, should development of conservation treatments be also like part of future projects, so that not only we develop greener materials, but we focus on development of greener treatments as a missing link from materials to actions, to practice, and to greener practices in the end?
I think that's a logical next step, personally, to look at all of the stages of a treatment, which I think has probably been semi-incorporated certainly into GreenArt. I think you're right in that sense, but we need to build communities of practice, don't we? And so for the GreenArt project, all of their Work Package 2 partners are still meeting post-project. We're still chatting, we're still reporting on new results, and Giovanna's coming, David's coming occasionally. And that's actually been really fruitful so far, just to see how these things roll with time and see what we get to do with them. And maybe bringing in some of the other materials from the other projects in Moxy, we could bring them together. We could have a community of practice to see how these things roll out and what kind of challenges and blocks we face with that. That could be an interesting outcome.
Yeah, these new techniques need to be adopted and discussed also in national organizations, for example. And it's our role also to link our research to them. I think it's about we're going towards the end of this session, and I would like to. Before I thank all the speakers again, I would like to make. Oh, one more question? I'm sorry, I always do this, Michaela.
It's okay.
But this is your moment.
Okay. So hello everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Michaela Florescu. I'm a conservator currently at Moderna Museet in Stockholm and part of the Moxy project. And it was really great to hear everybody's opinion on this. What I was also hoping to add here, it was really interesting in our discussions in Moxy about the implementation of this new techniques and technologies. This has become really quite apparent that conservators are part of an ecosystem, and we are unfortunately not often the decision-making people in this ecosystem. And this also goes back to the discussion about, is there a difference between conservators in institutions or conservators in private practice? So in that perspective, I think there is a little bit of a difference there. So I think what would be interesting to keep in mind for everyone in this room and in the perspective of this strategic policy meeting discussion is that as much as conservators are willing to embrace new techniques and technology and implement innovation in their practice, they are not, it doesn't depend only on them. It very much depends on the people who make decisions for them. And when you are in private practice, that's your client, so that's the institution. Or sometimes like a municipal service in charge of cultural heritage who is very far remote of everything we are all very familiar here with. And even when you work into an institution, it can happen that your institution is, for example, very exhibition driven and not so much focus on conservation research. And there again, the conservator is not the decision-making person. So I think this is a really key factor to keep in mind when we discuss how we can go from what we work with and what we create here in this project and how it can actually become a practice.
I think we can only agree to that, but would you like to comment, Loïc?
Yes. Yeah, two elements regarding that. One is, and Catherine was making me weaving signs. It is part of what Niku has been doing with us with the work from Oslo. So looking at these like governance from individuals to institutions. And so we can continue discussing about these aspects, and particularly with Joël about these questions. Another aspect which is not within the European project, but more the regional network that I am coordinating in the Paris area. So we are also trying to support conservators in private practice with specific agreements and with funding, so that they can actually have time to contribute to research activities. And this is now something that we have experienced on the last maybe 5 years or so. And we think it's one way maybe to go in this direction that maybe we could think of at European level. So how do we support financially conservators participating to projects so that they can contribute to the research?
But also support the decision-making people so they can accept that from the conservators when it comes to the proposal.
Yeah, I understand this is a point, and this is why I was mentioning the work from Niku, because this is central. I also think that one possibility is to have tighter links between institutions and conservators in private practice, which is the other directions we are experiencing and trying to implement.
Okay, very, very last comment. And
I have to say I disagree. I'm a conservator in private practice in New York, and I've also been part of software development of life cycle assessment. And we've developed this program so that conservators can make their decisions on their granular level, one by one. So if we work in a large museum or we work on our private practice, we can decide what materials we use, and we can choose the lower impact materials if we have the decision-making tools to do that. So if we understand what the materials are that can be lower impact. So I do think that we are empowered in the very bottom, very, very granular level of what materials we choose without needing the okay from anyone else, if that makes sense. You look not convinced.
I also have the feeling that we are touching slightly two different aspects. If the question is how can conservators in a private practice participate to some research developments, then, but I think your comments is particularly true, but it's slightly different aspect maybe. But we can continue. Over lunch.
And I invite you all to continue this discussion during the lunch break. I have two announcements to make, short announcement. Before we go for lunch, we have a photo opportunity here on the stairs, so I invite you all to go there. And then there's the tour to some of whom you have subscribed. There are still a few free spots, so contact Francesco Medeiros Henry if you want to join the tour still. But first, the group photo. And okay, before we go there, I'd like to thank all the speakers once again for their fantastic